So this week is Kabbalas HaTorah and Mamad Har Sinai. V'kol ha'am royen es ha'koiles v'halapidim. And the Mechilta says, royen es ha'koilos, hoy royen es ha'nishma v'shoimen es ha'nera. And obviously, this is a miracle. You cannot see koilos. Hoy royen es ha'nishma. But what is shoimin is hanir'ah. And that is one of the miracles, one of the many miracles in Mamad Har Sinai and in Kabbalas HaTorah. But there's a fascinating pshat al pi Musa, al pi Chasidus, shared by the Chaim Avalazhan and Nefesh HaChaim and the Bnei Yissaschar in Chodesh Sivan, where the Bnei Yissaschar speaks about Kabbalas HaTorah. And I find this to be a fascinating idea. But before we go into this part of the Shir, I just want to apologize to my dear friend Reb Shimon Pine, because Tu B'Shvat, tonight is the yahrzeit of his mother, and the Torah we're learning today is dedicated Le'ilui Nishmosa of Moras Sepoira Bas Reb Shimon. And tonight is her yahrzeit. She should be a malitzas yosha for the family, and Yisharoni no nachas and simcha shetanuach b'shalom al mishkava. And the Torah we're learning tonight is Le'ui Nishmosa, and Bezrat Hashem, I will dedicate the other shiurim I'm going to give throughout the week Le'ilui Nishmosa as well. Kol ro'in es ha'kolos. Ma'asha ein ha'peh yochal ha'daber ve'einu ayin yochal lirois. And the Mechilta goes beyond that. So obviously, this is a miracle which has no explanation b'darkei hateva. But both the Bnei Yissaschar and the Nefesh HaChaim, two great Gedolei Yisrael, representing two different camps and two different philosophies. The Bnei Yissaschar, one of the greatest Chassidish masters, and Reb Chaim Avalazhan, the greatest disciple, the greatest Talmud of the Vilna Gaon in Nefesh HaChaim. Kodesh Baruch Hu blessed the human being with five senses. Five senses, and all the data that he has and accumulates, he can only receive and only achieve by one of those five senses. Sight, hearing, you smell, you taste, and you touch. Chush ha're'iyah, shmiya, tam v'reach, and mishish yudayim. Which is the most tangible? Which is the most reliable? Obviously, sight. And the expression be'enai ro'isi, when a person says be'enai ro'isi, that is beyond question. I saw it. When you hear, how would you know it's true? So the most reliable and tangible of the five senses is the Riyas Einayim. We find that in Halacha as well. Sanhedrin sharo be'echad shehoreg es hanefesh. They could judge a person. They have no testimony. There are no Eidim. And the Gemara says, Lo teishmiya gedoyle Maria. If a Sanhedrin could judge a person by testimony, then what they saw with their own eyes is more reliable than anything anyone could ever tell them, any story they would hear from others. So out of the five senses, obviously the most reliable and the most tangible is chush ha're'iyah. However, not to us. Not to a Jew who is a mamin. What we hear is far more important than what we could ever see. And the most important things in our lives we have never seen, nor has any other human being. When Moshe Rabbeinu pleaded with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, Hareinu Eskedechu, HaKodesh Baruch Hu says, Moshe, it cannot be. Ki lo yir'ani ha'odam v'chai. V'samtichu b'nikras atziro. V'hoyo b'avoy kavoidi. V'aseroisi eskapi. V'ruisu esachoirai. Nobody ever saw Kodesh Baruch Hu, but we know His exists. We know Him personally. We feel Him. We believe in Him. Nobody ever saw him. We believe in Malachim because that is what the Torah teaches us, what Chazal teaches us. Nobody ever saw a Malach. So the Sfas Emes said, the Imre Emes said that his father, the Sfas Emes, saw Malachim. How does he know? Because he once heard the Sfas Emes say that the Kotzker Rebbe looked like a Malach. So the Imre Emes said, if my father would never see a Malach, he couldn't say the Kotzker Rebbe looked like a Malach. How do you know if you never saw a Malach? What a statement. So the Mendele Kotzker was all about Emes. And the Sfas Emes was essentially a Kotzker. So the Imre Emes said, I heard my father say that Mendele Kotzker looked like a Malach. So my father saw Malachim. Otherwise, how will you know how a Malach looks? That's an interesting statement. Would I take that at face value? Well, obviously that's what the Imre Emes said. He knew his father. He knew this Sfas Emes. I didn't. But most people never saw and never will see a Malach. We don't know how a shade looks. But in Chazal, we have many stories about shadim. How does a neshama look? Who knows? But we believe every Jew has a neshama kedosha. And after his death, it's not the end. In a way, it's the beginning, as the neshama goes up to the heavens. And the neshama will live on forever. So to us, Shemiah is more important than Re'iyah. Because our world, our spiritual world, is not based on what we see or what others saw. It is based on Avoseinu Sipru Lono. That is our tradition. That is what we receive generation after generation from Mamed Har Sinai in this week's Parsha. So Reb Chaim Evolozhin and the Bnei Yisro both say, B'shas Kabbalas HaTorah, the entire people were elevated to a madrega shehayu royen es hanishma. What they heard was so real, so tangible, so realistic, as if they would have seen. And the entire physical world was so distant from their conscience as if it is merely a madrega of Shemiah. And that is their pshat in royen es hanishma v'shoimen es hanera. And that was the madrega of Klal Yisrael b'mamad Har Sinai. So a week ago, when we spoke about Shiras Hayam, I quoted Chazal, and Chazal say, Rasu shifcha al hayam mashal haroya Cheskel v'kol hanavim. And Kriyas Yamsuf was the greatest revelation up to that generation. But an even greater revelation was Mamed Har Sinai. And in Mamed Har Sinai, when Bnei Yisrael were Magdim Nasal and Nishma Kodesh Baruch Hu said, Mi Gila Raz Zela Bonai Loshen Shemalach Yashoros Mishtam Shemboy. Geboire Koyach, Oise Devoroi, Lishmoa Bekol Devoroi. First Oise Devoroi, and then Lishmoa Bekol Devoroi. Malachi Ashoros, the angels of above, are Magdim Nasal and Nishma. And that was the Madrega of Klal Yisrael by Mamed Har Sinai. So if by Kriyas Yamsei they all were elevated to the Madrega of Nevi'im, when it came to Mamed Har Sinai, they achieved greater heights, and they were all elevated to the Madrega of Malachi Ashoros. And then they were Royen es hanishma v'shoimen es hanira. Liyosid Lavoi, once again, we will be there. As we say in Musaf and Shabbos, V'hu yigolenu shenis, v'yashmiyenu beracham of shenis, le'enei kol chai le'imoyer. Hengu al tiyes chamachlas kereishas lihiyois lochem le'elokim. Did you ever think about this? V'hu yashmiyenu beracham of shenis, le'enei kol chai. V'hu yashmiyenu should be ba'oznei kol chai. והוא ישמיענו ברחם אבשנס לעיני כל חי. So when we will be Zeicha to be a Mashiach, we will once again be elevated to those same heights that we experienced by Ma'amad Har Sinai, and we will see and experience V'hu yashmi'enu beracham avshenes le'enei kol chai le'moir hengu alti eschem achres kereshes lihiyois lochem le'elokim sheniska b'kol b'yameinu, to the fulfillment of this bracha. V'hu yigolenu shenes v'yashmi'enu shenes beracham avshenes le'enei kol chai le'moir hengu alti eschem achres kereshes lihiyois lochem le'elokim bebias goel tzedek b'mheiro v'yomeinu amen.